special guest DJ from the UK, DJ Shaq D. Tickets are $50 in advance and are available from Play the Records and Soundscape. For online purchase, please go to tickets.iliveradio.com. This event is sponsored by the Gladstone Hotel, Exclaim Magazine, Play the Record, and Poetry Jazz Cafe. Don't be the only one left out.
Hey, this is Emily King, and you're listening to iLive Radio.
Rare groove, revival, slow jams, upfront, old school.
The best music around in stereo sound.
This is John Browski. If I'm not snapping necks, cashing checks, wearing the large specs, I'm tuned into iLive Radio.
You're listening to iLive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio. iLive Radio.
We are back. They allowed us in the building, sir.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
I'm impressed. It's episode 2 of Strong Athlete Live on iLive Radio. We're back with our radio show / podcast. I'm here with my brother from another mother, Coach G. How are you on this Saturday morning, sir?
Excited to be here. Excited to share awesome information, knowledge, experience with our listeners.
Excellent. Today we're talking about us. We're talking a little bit about our journeys to where we are today, the things we've learned along the way, the successes, the failures, the mistakes, the insights, and hopefully people learn a little bit more about us and how we got to the position that we're currently at, and hopefully people learn a few things along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to spend some time really introducing ourselves more. I mean, people see us, people talk to us, but people don't always know us and know that we're humans. And we've been on this journey too. And we didn't just wake up, roll out of bed, and have all this knowledge and experience and can help coach people. I mean, we've messed up, we've screwed up. We have some things that might be hard to admit, but I mean, that is what makes us great coaches, and that which helps us to help others. So I think before we get started here, just a reminder of what this show is all about. It's about basically living a superhuman experience. And what that means is living the best life that you can live and doing all the things that you can do to help improve yourself and become the best version of yourself. And obviously, we work with a lot of athletes, and our mindset is performance, but performance applies to life in general. So just because you're not an athlete doesn't mean you're not going to get nothing out of this. You're going to get a ton out of our podcast. You're going to get a ton out of our interviews. Just knowledge that you can help improve your health, your wellness, and your personal performance.
Agreed. And I would say over the years, our definition of strong athlete has, I would say, become more broad, right? I was talking to one of our young athletes yesterday, Nick DeRosa, great kid, 23 years old, physique competitor, and he wants to be a coach. He's currently studying at Mohawk College, and he's looking to go into this path as well. And he's asking for some advice, and I said, don't narrow your focus to just one type of person, right? You may say, I want to train young guys like me who want to do physique competitions. And I said, well, that's great, and you should do that, but you should also broaden your perspective, right? So don't say no to the 50-year-old accountant. Don't say no to the 45-year-old corporate lawyer. Don't say no to all these professionals who have so much to offer you, and as well as you offering something to them. You will grow faster as a coach with that broader base and become better at what you do than if you were to narrow your focus. And so getting back to that definition of a strong athlete, anyone who comes into our facility and commits themselves mentally and physically toward achieving a goal, whether it's to lose 10 pounds for a reunion, whether it's to bench press 500 pounds for a powerlifting competition at the Toronto Pro Show, whether it's a fitness competition, mixed martial arts competition, whether it's to make the NHL, whatever the goal is, the mindset to be the best version of yourself and the commitment to work your ass off in everything that you do, from the training, the nutrition, etc., that mindset defines you as a strong athlete, in my opinion. It's not just the stereotype that you would see of a person lifting a lot of weight or a person competing in athletics. It's a lot more broad than that. And if you carry that mindset, no matter what your profession is, I think you could define yourself as a strong athlete.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, and we could have a whole podcast here on talking about specialization versus kind of broad approaches to coaching. And I think that's something we're going to have to do at some point. You bring up a lot of interesting points there and almost open up a can of worms there on that conversation.
Right.
And to build off of that, I like just a reminder of kind of, we've developed this 6-factor approach of what we think is necessary to kind of achieve that strong athlete, elite human performance level. And not kind of in any priority sequence, but we talk about mindset, we talk about skill development, whether that's in sports or whether that's just reading books or developing yourself in whatever things you're interested in. We talk about strength and conditioning or exercise or your movement patterns.
Right.
We talk about nutrition. We talk about rest and recovery strategies, kind of your downtime, what are you doing to kind of take care of your body from a love standpoint.
Right.
And then including all of that together, we talk about ecosystem and how the ecosystem, the environment that you're in on a daily basis, influences and affects all of those other factors.
That's so important. The people around you,
so important.
The information you take in, the media you consume, all of that stuff, I think, encompasses that ecosystem and can determine your mindset, can determine your success, and all of the other factors. Right?
Yeah. And if you missed our last podcast, which was our first podcast, we had Crew Joey on here, and we talked about mindset specifically. And if you want to listen to that, you can go to strong-athlete.com/podcast, and there's a live feed, SoundCloud feed there. You can go and listen to that if you missed it. It was an awesome episode.
It was our first one, and feedback has been great so far.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great feedback.
I think we'll keep doing it.
So what we want to kick off today is we want to tell our stories.
Okay.
We're going to work here. I'm going to interview you first.
I'm on the hot seat.
We're gonna go through your story a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna poke you, prod you, make you feel a little uncomfortable. Hopefully,
good.
Share some things that maybe you haven't shared in the past of what sent you on this journey and kind of what led you up to here. So the first question I kind of have with that is where did it all start for you?
That's a great question. I know. I always say that. A lot of my clients know that I say that when I'm buying time to a question that they've asked me. So I've bought enough time there. It started in 1989. 1989, I was 14 years old, and my childhood friend, Professor Kevin Milne, who's a prof at the University of Windsor, we had played soccer, we had played a bunch of sports, we're kids, and we had decided in the summer of 89 that we wanted to get bigger. We wanted to get bigger and stronger. And so our starting point, for some reason, was the library. Magazines came after, but we started at the library, and we found this book, and I talked about it in our newsletter a couple weeks back. It's called Getting Stronger.
Yeah.
And this book is authored by a 4-time Mr. Universe and one of the pioneers of the bodybuilding, health, and fitness culture. His name is Bill Pearl, and he's actually, I think, 85 years old right now, and was also a mentor to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this book had literally over 100 different programs, so-called sport-specific programs for whatever you wanted to do, and it was illustrated with like over 350, maybe 400 different exercises, and it was all step-by-step. So we got this in the early summer. Kevin had a small weight set. I pretty much lived at his house. I was an only child, so he's like a brother. So I was always at that house. There's more action there. And we started working out.
Carol, I got to stop you there. you guys decided that you want to get bigger.
Right.
Where did that come from? Like, how did that start? Because that's like the key point right there. Like, you didn't just wake up and say, hey, Kevin, let's go get bigger. Like, right. What inspired that?
Right. So I should back up and say that experience was my first experience with weights, with weight training. Prior to that, my first influence was a guy named Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker is a legend in the NFL. He's also, I think he's over 50 years old now and actually competes as a mixed martial artist. Absolute freak of nature. And my parents bought me this biography of Herschel Walker when I was 9 or 10 years old. At the time, he wasn't even in the NFL. He was in the USFL, which you have to be really old to even know what that is.
The what?
The USFL, which merged and I think became part of the NFL, and that's a long story. But Herschel Walker, this legendary running back, his story was he was overweight when he was a kid, and his sister was extremely athletic, and he wanted to be like his sister. So he asked a coach what he could do to get bigger and stronger and faster. And the coach said, you got to do push-ups, you got to do sit-ups, and you got to run sprints. And so this guy took that so literally that he got up to a point where he was doing over 1,000 push-ups and over 1,000 sit-ups and running countless sprints every single day.
Right.
A regimen that he still practices to some degree to this day. And he's over 50 years old. I read that. I don't know why it resonated with me, but at 9 or 10 years old, I started doing that too. Right. So that was my initial foundation. So I was this skinny little kid with this rock hard chest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And rock hard triceps. And I could do push-ups and sit-ups forever at that time. And so that was my earliest influence. But when we went to high school, I remember gym class, taking my shirt off, being this super skinny kid, and an older classmate said, man, this is exactly what he said. I still remember it. 41 years old. This is how many years back? And he said, you are one skinny Ethiopian. I'm not even from Ethiopia, but he said, you're one skinny Ethiopian. And obviously it struck a chord.
Right.
It cut deep, right? I laughed it off, that nervous / embarrassed laugh.
Yeah, the awkward laugh.
Yeah. And kind of, it obviously stayed in the back of my mind. So that was a huge motivator for me. And Kevin, who wasn't he didn't really care about weight training to the same degree. But I said, hey, let's do this, and we both decided to do it together, right? And that book was like the gateway to training, opened up our eyes. As I said, it was illustrated. There was no internet back then, so your best form of information was a book, and then a little bit later became the magazine. Right, and so that kicked it off. That started things.
What would you say would be the next key transition from that point?
And the next key transition was getting my own weight set in my basement that my dad helped build for me. And when I think back, I'm extremely grateful for this, because the first weight set that we had at Kevin's house was just the adjustable bench, the plastic weights with sand.
Yep, had those.
Remember those?
We all had those.
A barbell and some adjustable dumbbells. Amazing for a starting 14-year-old kid. But maybe a year and a half later, I got one too, because I guess I was spending too much time outside of the house and my folks wanted me to stay at home. So I got this adjustable bench, which also had a dipping bar attachment and a squat rack. Right. At the time, let's say this is 91, 1990, that was unheard of.
It's cutting edge.
Right?
It's cutting edge training equipment.
To have that in your basement.
Right.
So I had that, and another neighbor who was, I would say, 10 years older than me at the time, or 10 years older than me, was also heavily into training. And he gave me a stack of magazines. Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Ironman, muscular development. And I started reading those with a passion and just put everything else aside. All my information at the time came from those sources. That's where my introduction to how to put a program together came from. That's where my introduction to the idea of nutrition to manipulate your body. And I also noticed that I gravitated to certain types of athletes who were strong, physically strong, but also they had a mental strength that was projected from the magazines. And so, in addition, I read Black Belt magazine, and there's another martial Kung Fu, Inside Kung Fu. All right, so that was my reading material. So Bruce Lee, huge influence. Herschel Walker, as I mentioned. Dorian Yates, who is, for those who don't know, one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. And I was still really fascinated about track and field. And so Ben Johnson was another great influence, right? And so 1988 was the infamous Seoul Olympics, and he was always a hero of mine, right? But these particular individuals, Herschel Walker, Dorian Yates, Bruce Lee, really, really powerful mindsets that stayed with them for their whole careers. And as I read their bios, as I read interviews with them, as I consumed as much information as possible, I realized that with the right mindset, and I didn't appreciate it to the same degree that I do now, with the right mindset, you can do just about anything, right? And so those guys were my earliest influences as far as celebrities go.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people can share those people as key influencers.
Yeah, Bruce Lee especially.
Yeah,
right?
Bruce Lee especially. Dorian Yates for a lot of guys too.
Definitely.
Blood and guts.
Yeah, he just had this working class
intensity,
this discipline. He resonated with me as well because I was very social, but I could also be quiet, right? So I wasn't necessarily the life of the party type guy, although I had lots of friends and I could be social. But this guy seemed very down to earth, humble, introverted, focused on what he had to do, didn't get caught up in all the nonsense. And when I say nonsense in bodybuilding, the Venice Beach culture and gossip and all of that. He wasn't flashy. He went to work like with his lunch pail, went into the gym, trained harder than anybody that I have ever seen train before or since. And he would come to the States once a year, win a bunch of titles, and then go back to his cave in Birmingham, England, right? So he was a very, very powerful influence for me, and I liked to embody that approach back then.
Yeah, he definitely had a very clear focus, and he followed through with that. Absolutely. And he wasn't swayed off his focus.
Absolutely, he knew what he wanted out of life, and he just, as you said, he had this laser-like focus to go out and get it. Right.
Okay, so you got the home gym. You went through that whole process.
Yes.
Let's move forward past that. So now you're not training in the basement anymore.
Yes.
What's the next phase? Maybe you're done high school. You're in high school. You're going to university. You want to step your game up to the next level. A lot of guys, young guys, we all started training in the basement.
Yeah.
We want to move to the next level.
Yeah.
What was that next level, and kind of what did that look like?
The next level was to follow my neighborhood mentors. A guy named Junior, another guy named Wayne Forsyth, who's a legend in the local area, still a fantastic trainer out in the Mississauga area. Followed those guys out to I'm going to use the term Good Life because that was the name of the gym, but Good Life back then was much different than Good Life right now. Good Life back then in Scarborough was like a World Gym or a Gold's Gym. It was very hardcore. A lot of people that competed in bodybuilding trained out of there. And so I went there, and the advantage of training in my basement for all those years was I was pretty strong now. Still skinny. So 15, 16, 17, I'm like 165 pounds. Little guy, right? but could move all this weight. And so I earned a lot of respect from the older peers and folks at the gym. I didn't just walk in there with no prior knowledge. I could squat, I think, 365 at the time, which is pretty good for a 17-year-old.
Yeah, that's substantial for anybody.
Right.
Forget 17-year-olds.
I could bench maybe 275 at that weight. And I earned some respect from those guys. And so that was like my next home. And I trained there for a couple of years before I went to university and played university football and ran university track.
Right,
yeah. So so going into even transitioning into University of Windsor, where I was where football and track were my passions, I walked into the tryouts with this foundation of training. And so I remember in football, they'd give out these different colored shirts which represented how well you did in the strength and conditioning part of it. So it was like bench press, it was leg press, it was your 40-yard dash, it was your vertical, and I excelled in those areas, and so ended up getting, I believe it was a blue shirt. So blue shirt was like you're the top of the food chain, right?
Right.
And
you're a target, basically.
And so you're also that guy, right? And that helped me earn some respect. I mean, I also didn't know how to play football, so I was green, couldn't catch a ball, didn't know patterns or defense, but I had this raw strength and I had speed. And so that earned me some cred. And then over time, as I learned the game, I got some respect from the guys.
That's awesome. So what we want to talk about a bit through this out is like the learnings, the failures.
Yes.
So you started lifting in the basement.
Yes.
You did that through high school. You got strong. You started training with the other guys in your area at the gym.
Yeah.
Continued to grow. That was more from a aesthetics, strength, mindset. You said I want to get bigger, and these guys are all big and they're training.
Yes.
Then you go to university. You start playing football.
Yes.
You're running track. A lot of people see that as, we'll call that sports specific.
Mm-hmm.
How did, if so, your training change? And did it change for the better? Did it change for the worse? Did it stay the same? Kind of what did you learn through that in terms of training in relation to your sport or to get better at your sport?
Yeah, that's another good one. So what I actually did is I was always, and still am to a certain degree, I was always a bodybuilder. So I always trained like a bodybuilder and threw in some sport-specific exercises, i.e. power cleans, hang cleans, snatches, a lot of plyometrics, obviously, with track and field. And my track coaches wouldn't be happy with me because I liked to train like a bodybuilder, and I did these like heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, which I to this day think helped me.
Right.
The mindset on how people should train for track has changed dramatically over the years. And with football, my training was still very bodybuilding focused.
Sorry, right? I want to pause you there.
Yeah.
You said the mindset for training for track and field has changed over the years.
Yeah.
I want you just for like 1 minute in like one sentence, like 2 sentences. How has that changed? Has it changed in terms of less heavyweights, for example, more heavyweights? In your opinion, I mean, I have my opinion on that, but what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, there were, and I believe there still are, two camps. There is the camp largely influenced from the great Charlie Francis, who, as many people know, was Ben Johnson's track coach. Really doesn't get the credit that he should for his contributions to the world of not just track and field, but athletics and sports training as a whole, because of the steroid scandal. But he was of the mindset that the nervous system guides everything. And so you train the nervous system, i.e. with very heavy weights, with plyometrics, and that will translate into improved performances in sprint times and athletic performance. So that was a big
transition.
Yeah. Whereas other track coaches were of the mind that you didn't need the heavy weights. And many of them came from this idea that you needed a base of endurance. So these are the same people who would say you need to do cross country in the fall and then transition into sprint training later, which is totally ridiculous. But that was where the other camp was, right? So because Charlie was all about lifting heavy weights, and if anyone who knows Ben Johnson knows that he could squat over 600, bench press over 400, and he was an early influence of mine. Because that aligned well with bodybuilding and how I liked to train already, I just said like that.
You gravitated towards that mentality, instantly.
This is what I want to do.
No one's talking you out of that.
No, exactly. So that was.
I mean, Ben Johnson was pretty fast in his day. Would you say
he
was all right?
Absolutely.
So he was doing something right.
Yes, exactly.
Whether you want to talk about scandals or not, I mean, the training is still the training, and the result is still the result.
Exactly, and that training has influenced the learning and insights of coaches around the world for decades now.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so you're done university. Your so-called athletic career is over, because most people, when they finish university or school in general, their athletic career seems to diminish unless they're has this high aspirations to compete at a professional level.
Right.
I know you did some bodybuilding.
I did. I finally did a show after. So the journey started in '89, as I said, and I finally stepped on stage at the Kingston Championships, which they don't have anymore, unfortunately, in 2001. So at that point, I'm 26 years old. I'm at my biggest ever. I got up to 221 pounds was the highest number I saw on my scale, which and I'm 5'9", 5'10", so it was a decent size, right? It was a decent size, and I stepped on stage light heavy at 184.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a great experience, and that was influenced by my career at one of the largest sports nutrition companies in the world, and that was Muscle Tech at the time, known as Iovate Health Sciences now. So I had been there for a year, and that was a huge pivotal point for me as well, because at the time, it was this really elite team of like-minded individuals who all had a health sciences or kin or bio or chemistry background, who loved bodybuilding or training, were passionate about it, and they had all been hired by Muscle Tech in the marketing department or the research department. So this is 2000, 2001. You came right after that.
Green.
A huge part of that initial team, and it was just such an intensity, right, to produce the best products, to write the best advertisements, to do the best marketing, to research the most cutting edge ingredients. And all those guys were into bodybuilding, some into powerlifting. And so I felt like I was working at this amazing job, and I could still pursue to a degree my athletic aspirations.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I had that going, and there were so many great people there that helped to feed that or facilitate that, so that I didn't just become the guy who goes to work and then goes home, sits on the couch, turns on the TV, and that's it, right? Like after work was even more exciting than work. So work was exciting, and if you remember, after work we'd go down to the in-house gym. Rage Against the Machine would be playing every single day, and nobody got sick of it.
Yeah.
And if you got sick of it, you put on people put on Pantera. If people got sick of that, then we put in Dre, Snoop, something like that, and we all worked out. And it was like 20 plus people.
I remember
just killing it in the gym, and the results everybody got during that time period, getting to the idea of environment, ecosystem, were phenomenal.
Yeah, that ecosystem is you describe that. You have to be in it.
You have to be in it.
And that was an intense atmosphere, and the music was blaring. And then I can remember Matt Spino coming out and putting house music on, and everyone yelling at him, and throwing out his CD, and then putting back on some loud music.
That's right.
Those were some good times.
Yeah, and there were, some phenomenal strength athletes coming out of that in-house corporate gym. Like, I go into gyms right now, and it's rare that you get impressed by what someone's doing, but back then you had guys doing shoulder presses with 140-pound dumbbells for 10 reps. Yeah. You had guys doing incline dumbbell presses with 150-pound dumbbells for 8 to 10 reps. You had guys squatting over 500, guys deadlifting 500-600 pounds. You had guys leg pressing with as much weight as you can fit on the bar. And this was routine. Like, this wasn't like
competition.
No, people were doing that every single week.
Daily.
Right? And it was just that environment, and it was really, really, you talk about pivotal moments. That was one of my greatest experiences as far as growing as a person, as a coach, learning business, and meeting some amazing people, including yourself.
Awesome. Right? That was a great experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we're going to fast forward a bit here.
All right.
So now you're a coach.
Now I'm a coach.
You've been a coach throughout this journey. You've always guided people. I mean, you were a mentor for me. You were a coach for me as well.
Right.
After everything you've gone through, all the ups and downs, I'm going to put it on the table where the 3 most important things that you've learned to be true, from performance standpoint, after all of this, after you've screwed up, done right, done wrong.
Yeah.
If you had to give advice to someone coming up, young or even old, that just wants to get into improving their body, improving their mindset, what are the 3 things that you would kind of hang your hat on? And you can't direct them to a book. There's no books.
I'm going to say 3 words that come to mind off the top. And the first word is preparation. The second word is strength. The third word is movement. The first 2, I believe in all 3 wholeheartedly. I would say I have a high degree of expertise in the first 2, and I have a great appreciation for the third. And part of my path right now is to become much more knowledgeable in that area, because I've seen how important it is, especially after you go through injuries. Let me backtrack. I'm going to say preparation is number 1, and that is like a guiding principle for life. If you prepare in advance for your training, for your nutrition, for the presentation you've got to do the next day, for the competition that you're in a few weeks, if you prepare, doing the work, whether you feel like it or not, showing up, whether you feel like it or not, getting up early, whether you're tired or not, that is going to be a huge determinant of your success in the future. So those people that prepare, and think back to my early influences, the Herschel Walkers, the Dorian Yateses, the Bruce Lees, those people prepared, and it wasn't just their talent that got them to where they finally achieved. It was the work ethic. It was the discipline. It was the commitment to preparation day in and day out that got them to achieve these superhuman feats, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is strength. And people who train with me have heard me say this phrase, especially to my female clients. I tell them, you're so much stronger than you know. When you're stronger, everything is easier. When you're stronger, you're likely going to be faster. You're likely going to be a better athlete. All sorts of everyday tasks are easier if you commit to getting stronger. For so long, though, throughout my journey, strength has not always been considered the most important quality for the working professional who comes in and wants to get better. They come in, they say, I want to lose 10 pounds. They come in, they say, I want a 6-pack. And in my mind, the first thing I need to do is get stronger. And the strength is like a launch pad for you to achieve all those other things, right? So I want every client I have to learn how to do a chin-up. I want every client I have to be able to do multiple push-ups without being on their knees. I want every client I have to be able to do a dip, to squat properly. All of those things, if you can do them, will help you in every aspect of life, will prevent injury from happening or reduce the risk of injury. And it's just the foundation for everything. And so that's one of the things that I believe to be true after 27 years now doing this. And then movement, which, as I said, the appreciation for has come more recently. That is really, really important, especially because the majority of our population does not move. They sit or they lie in their bed for a total of 23 hours a day. They come to the gym 3-4 days a week for an hour. That's their movement. That's not acceptable. And that's one of the reasons why we have back pain and knee pain and shoulder issues and elbow issues. And I have those issues myself as a result of leading the sedentary lifestyle for the most part, being an athlete for an hour a day and generally leading a sedentary lifestyle. So getting people to embrace movement multiple times a day and really running with that, I think will add years to their lives, their athletic careers, and improve their quality of life. So those three things.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
All right.
It was a great story.
Thank you. And let's move into you. Spotlight's off me for now, which is good. Where did it all begin for the man known as Gaetan Boutin?
Wow, that's again, I'll pause for a second,
Buying
but
time.
Not that I haven't had time to think about this. It basically all began like everyone else in the basement. You know, I had an older brother. I still have an older brother.
Yes. Shout out to Stefan.
Yes. So shout out to my brother. He's a great guy.
Yes.
He was very athletic when he was younger, but as he got into high school, he shifted more into other activities, mainly girls.
Yes,
right?
That's a major distraction.
Yeah. So he was like that athletic guy that decided to start lifting weights, I would say more for the attention than for the result of performance.
Right.
So there was a lot of weights in our basement, and he got into it for like maybe a year or two, and then that kind of faded away. But, you know, I started picking them up. There was the sand weights and sand plates, and thought, you know, I'm going to give this a try.
Right.
And started just playing around with the weights. Didn't know what I was doing. Looked for resources in books. And you had that York poster. Do you remember that? And it came with the gym set.
Definitely.
And you posted on the wall. Yeah. And it had all the exercises. So I'd look at that.
There's about 12 exercises there.
Yeah. I'd look at that, follow that, do the best that I can.
Yeah.
I was very athletic as a young kid. And I had I was a normal body type as a young kid. And then when I started to get into my teens, my body just totally did some weird stuff. And
what happened? You got super tall first of all.
No, before that,
okay.
I basically became the chubby kid. It was a totally weird transition.
Right.
Went from just a normal kid to the little kind of chubby kid.
Right.
And that was a difficult time. And I remember I was playing hockey as a kid. And I was uncomfortable to take my shirt off in the dressing room because of my physique. And I was trying to lift weights and I was doing all those things, and all the other guys seemed to be in shape.
Yep.
You know, when we got on the ice, it was a non-issue. It was competitive, you know, very athletic. It was just that small time in the dressing room where I didn't want to take my shirt off. Right. So that was a huge inspiration for me to be like, I got to change this.
It's an interesting commonality with us. An insecurity, me being the skinny Ethiopian and you being the chubby kid, led us to where we are now. And put us on that path to strength and conditioning and coaching.
And I don't know what turned the key, but I went on this kind of full-scale mission. And I don't think I've ever told anyone this one piece. Okay, this is you're going to laugh. I went and I bought Slim Fast.
Okay.
That was my first supplement experience, right? I bought the shake.
Yes.
And I can remember having a shake for breakfast a shake for lunch, and then dinner.
How old were you?
Oh, I must have been like 13 years old here.
That is something else.
13, okay. Yeah. That's my first supplement experience.
Right.
So I'm trying to lose fat. I'm lifting weights. I'm doing all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Haven't really got much of an effect. This is a slow transition, right?
Right.
So I was fortunate enough I have 2 sisters.
Yes.
And at the time, they were both dating guys who were into lifting.
That's right.
Do you remember Ray? Ray was my sister's boyfriend.
Yes.
And he was into lifting, and he'd come over after work, and he ended up bringing all of his weights to our basement because we had a kind of an open space in our basement.
Right.
So he brought all of his weights over, added to the weights that we had. So we went from sand plates to some metal plates, cutting edge, right? We stepped it up.
Yeah.
And I started training with him in the basement. Like, hey, I'd call him up, are you coming after work?
Right.
And he worked early shifts, so he'd get off around the same time I get off school.
Right.
So it was perfect timing.
Yes.
Come, work out, lift weights with him. He taught me a lot.
Yes.
It was just classic bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Weightlifting.
Yeah.
And then my other sister, Michelle, she was dating a guy named Jason. And he was a football player.
Yes.
And he played at a pretty high level football. And he was a small guy, but he had a chip on his shoulder, right?
Yes.
So he had a great physique, though, because he knew that in order to compete with these monsters,
he had to outwork everybody.
He had to be stronger.
Yes.
He had to be able to perform better than everybody else.
Yeah.
So he was also a manager at Bally's Fitness. Remember Bally's?
Which at the time was a very hardcore gym as well. Bally's and Good Life way back then were pretty serious gyms.
So I'm now 14.
Yeah.
He would sneak me into the gym with him. Okay, so first of all, what boyfriend does that with the girlfriend's younger brother? You're nice to them, but you don't come over, pick them up, drive them all the way to the gym, sneak them in with you, and train with you.
That's huge.
Right?
Yes.
And I remember at the time, I'll never forget, he was training with this other guy. Chad was his name. Monster football player, too.
Yeah.
They had a program, and it was from Laurier University.
Right, so it was official. This is the real deal.
Yeah, and these guys weren't even in university. They were past university, but they were playing basically pretty much semi-pro football at the time.
Yeah.
And I can still remember, there's percentages of weights, and it was such a detailed program at the time.
Yes.
And that's the first time I ever really exposed to programming.
Yeah.
Right? And it's follow this. These are your weights.
Yes.
These are your percentages. Yeah. And when I started following a program and looking at things that were actually proven, that is when the results really started to come. There was also magazines kicking around my house because those guys like their bodybuilding magazines. Sure. And I'll tell you, the second supplement that initiated was chromium. Okay.
Chromium picolinate.
There was an ad, and it wasn't even of a person. It was of a statue with abs. And I'm I'm going to have abs.
Right. I need this.
And chromium equals abs because it was so influential, right? Right. So this is past, Slim Fast is gone now. Let's just clear that up. That lasted for a month.
Moved on.
Yeah. So we're doing Northern Lights protein powder.
Because that was the most cost-effective brand at the time.
Yeah. And chromium picolinate, the ultimate combination.
Yeah.
Right? So that summer, I trained, and then when I went back to school, I started in high school. This was about grade 10.
Yeah.
Started playing football.
Yes.
We had this crazy gym teacher, and people warned you about him. My brother had gone to the school. My sisters, they're all older than me. They had gone to the school, and they said, you better hope you don't get this teacher. Right? And it was Monsieur Saint-Aubin. So he was a French guy.
Got to watch those French
guys. Yeah. And because I was going to French school at the time.
Right.
And all he did with generally would take us out to the track and make us run. He'd make us run. And that's pretty much what he made us do. He was just running freak show.
And what a blessing that was.
Well, this is the whole thing because now I've been lifting weights. I'm feeling like I'm getting stronger. Yeah. And the first day, it's the mile run test. I've never done, I don't think I ever did the mile run test, right? So I did that and I got destroyed.
Nothing breaks you like cardio when you don't do cardio.
Yeah, it destroyed me. I think I did almost a 9-minute mile. It was the worst thing ever.
Right. Oh, you finished. And, that's good.
Yeah, and I was nowhere near the worst.
Right.
But I wasn't the best.
Right.
So now here I am okay, another goal for me.
Yes.
So I started doing the mile run, training for the mile run, lifting weights.
Yes.
playing football at the time with some exceptional athletes. Like those guys, even though we're all the same age, they were mentors at the time for me.
Definitely.
They all went on to scholarships in the U.S.
Yeah, I think one made to the NFL, right?
Yeah, Darren Diedrich went to the NFL. I think he's playing in the CFL now.
Yes.
These guys were freak shows.
Absolutely.
So like those guys motivated me too. Started training hard. Finished that season and like dropped my mile time down to like 6 something,
which is super fast.
Yeah, from 9 to something to 6 something. That was such an amazing transition.
Right.
And then my body totally changed. We went from fat to 6-pack.
Yes.
And it was amazing. It was like such an amazing thing of following programs.
Right.
You know, chromium picolinate, you know, like the miracle supplement that did it all. And that was a huge thing for me. That changed my confidence. That got me addicted to training, addicted to, you know, eating right wasn't on board yet, hadn't got to that phase.
Right.
And we'll fast forward that in a second to where that all really started.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my introduction into the whole world of training and performance. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, let's move forward from that then.
Yeah, so we talk a little bit about key influencers, and we'll probably touch a little bit more on that. But you mentioned nutrition and the importance of eating right, and that's something that I observed in you at a very early age. I mean, we had early on when I met you. So I met you, it's over 15 years now, and even then you had an understanding of, this is good for me and this is not good for me. Back then we still did a bit of fast food. We didn't make the same choices we would make now, but you had an understanding of the importance of nutrition and how that can influence particularly your body composition. Like the athletic performance, that's debatable. It works, we know that, but it wasn't so much that. It was really how it's going to make you look. And
I can remember sitting in lunchroom with all you guys, and you guys are all monster bodybuilders, and I was never a big bodybuilder. I was more like that kind of normal sized athlete.
Right.
And I always be like, you know, maybe you shouldn't be drinking that. You shouldn't be drinking that Coke, and maybe you should ease off on those fries. Everyone's looking at me cross-eyed, like, who the hell is this kid?
That's right.
So I'll tell you where that all came from. Near the end of high school, actually, near the end of high school, one of my best friends growing up, Brent Atkinson.
Yes, shout out to Brent.
Yeah, their family business was martial arts.
That's right.
His dad was a competitive martial artist. He fought like back in the day, like against guys like Billy Blanks and all these guys. Yes. He was a world kickboxing champion. So I would spend a lot of time with them, and Brent would spend like weekends with his dad, and I'd basically be hanging out with them.
Right.
And at the time, his dad was like a key influencer. Because he was this guy, older guy, but in shape, had crazy muscle, abs, lean. And whenever we go to his house, there would be like this, I can't even describe, like a basket, like a 2-foot by 3-foot massive basket in his kitchen, and it was just full of supplements.
Right.
Full of supplements. Yeah. And like I was always interested in like science and chemistry. That's like what I went to school for, is like sciences. So that was just like what blew my mind. Like we'd go to his house and I'd be picking them up and reading them and like, what is this? And here I am, chromium picolinate and northern lights, and now we have all kinds of crazy stuff here.
Yeah, totally.
So I'd ask him a million questions. I'd be constantly asking questions. And when we would go out to eat with his dad. His dad would be the guy ordering like, you know, poached eggs, steamed potatoes, like don't fry them, no butter, like steam my vegetables.
You had never heard anyone make those requests.
Like when I grew up, it wasn't like that. We were like a steak and potatoes kind of family, right? My dad grew up on a farm, so classic farm food, right?
Yep.
So here he is ordering this like clean food, and like, you know, I wasn't that smart at the time, but you can put 2 and 2 together, right?
Yeah.
You see what someone eats, you see the way they look, you see what they do.
This is working for them.
Yeah, you'd be an idiot not to connect those pieces of the puzzle, right? So that was a huge transition on the food side.
Yeah.
And from there, like we started training martial arts. I started training martial arts with them. They were doing karate classes, and I never really got into karate, but what I would do, I would go to the fight classes. They had like sparring classes.
Right.
And my buddy Brent would bring me to the sparring classes, and he'd give me a gi, and he'd like, here, just put this black belt on.
Right.
So I just said, it could be a whole disrespect to the culture, but I put a black belt on and go into these classes and spar with all these black belts.
Well, let me stop you there, because let me pause you there for a sec, because your evolution as a martial artist has started from that point.
Yeah.
Right? You skipped all the formalities. You skipped the katas, you skipped the forms.
Yes.
All that, in many people's view, bullshit.
Right.
And you went to the practical part.
Right.
The fighting, the defending yourself.
Right.
And that's carried with you to today. Back then, there was no mixed martial arts, at least on television.
Right.
And we see the importance of doing what works and not spending any time on the other stuff, right? So how did that shape your evolution as a martial artist and then soon to be a coach?
Yeah, I mean, if you hear me talk about today, I always talk about there's martial arts and then there's fight science.
Right.
You know, those are two different things in my opinion. And martial arts is the art form. Mm-hmm. It's the techniques, it's the katas, it's the movement patterns. And I think that's amazing stuff.
Right.
But me, I'm all about getting the quickest result, you know, putting the most effective system together to get the ultimate result.
Right.
And at the time, I was a competitive athlete and I wanted to win. I wanted to win titles, championships, belts. So for me, it was like, give me the details, the quickest route. I don't want to say I'm skipping steps, but it's about being not just efficient, but effective.
Right.
How can I be effective?
Right.
And that was kind of where my mindset started, because he would take me to tournaments and say, yeah, compete in the black belt division. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm a white belt. He's like, don't worry about it. Because he trained me, and his dad trained me into just right to the stuff that works.
Right.
And I would watch both of them winning, and I see what they did, and it was just like, okay, I'll just do that.
Exactly.
Let's get right to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that happens. Like, I want to just get the ultimate result quickly.
And that is, if we see how mixed martial arts has evolved, that's really the approach that all of the successful MMA practitioners, athletes have taken, right?
And I think there's been a failure, though. There's been an overload to this point where now people are trying to do too much in a lot of these sports. Mixed martial arts is a perfect example of these guys are training 7 days a week, 3 times a day.
Right.
Like, and they're like wondering why they're not getting the result that they want. There's a few guys that can pull that off, but now you're starting to create mass confusion. And we'll have a whole show on this specific topic, because I don't want to get into that right now. We don't have much time left.
Definitely. We'll talk about at a future episode what matters.
Yeah.
What really works.
Yeah.
And what people shouldn't waste their time on.
For sure.
Right.
So from there, though, I basically ended up meeting the Canadian national kickboxing coach, who was actually a student of Brent's dad, Alex Atkinson, and started training with him. And he invited me to compete on the Canadian national kickboxing team. Well, he invited me to the tryout. Right. Came. Brent and I went with Brent. Flying colors.
Yes.
Did awesome. Went on the team, and then we started competing on the circuit. And
that's a whole podcast.
That's a whole podcast in itself. Muzammil Nawaz was my coach. Everyone knows him as Maz the Machine.
Yes.
So we'd get there early. We thought we were getting there early. He's like, be here at 7 a.m. We'd get there at 7 a.m. to train. He'd be finishing his workout, which started at 3 a.m.
Wow.
And that's why they call him the Machine. And so we had to start thinking of things like cutting weight, you know, and following those patterns of you got to cut weight, you got to eat right. You know, that's when training for sport really kicked in, because he'd have these programs for us to follow, and some worked, some didn't work. And I tried all kinds of things, running, weightlifting, tempo work, plyometrics. I can remember actually one time, and this transition, I started fighting for a while, and then started working with you at Muscle Tech. So I was going to university at first, fighting, competing.
That's right.
No other sports, just school, work, compete.
Yep.
Finished school, started working at the corporate Muscle Tech with you.
Right.
It was an awesome experience. I was still fighting, and it was kind of like Fight Club, if you can remember.
That's right.
I'd be coming because actually you were my boss at the time. Right. And I'd be like, sir, I just want to let you know that I need Friday off because I'm traveling to like New York or Chicago. Yeah. And by the way, when I come back on Monday,
I might have a black
eye. Might be wearing sunglasses or have a black eye. So those were some interesting times. Coming into the corporate world wearing sunglasses and keep my head down at my desk and try not to look at anybody.
But it was very impressive to me, and obviously, you know, I have a ton of respect for you, but my respect level grew even more seeing you go through that process of holding down a 9 to 5, excelling at a 9 to 5, going to the States or fighting on these Indian reserves, all these backwater country fight places, and performing at a high level, coming back, some scars, maybe a shiner, and then going back to your job.
Going back to work. And getting into the after work workouts down in the gym.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that was such a huge thing for me, and that taught me so much about mindset. Taught me so much about putting the time in to develop skills. Not to get confused and complicated with so many different techniques and concepts. Like figure out what works for you and become amazing at it.
Absolutely.
Strength and conditioning was such a journey for that. I can remember we had if you remember Scott Welch.
Yes.
Great guy. Super knowledgeable in training. Like the guy's just a wealth of knowledge. And I can remember being in the gym doing a tempo workout.
Yeah.
That was prescribed on my program with my coach.
Yeah.
And he basically said to me something like, you should add heavy weights into your program.
Right.
And me as the young kid, not cocky fighter, but I was a confident fighter. You had to be, or else you shouldn't be fighting if you're not confident.
Yep.
And I can remember debating with him about that at the time.
Yeah.
About like, no, I need to do this because X, Y, and Z, right? And he was right. Like I'll admit to this day, he definitely had, a point. And it definitely applies to the sport. So it's one of those things where what I've learned mainly along the way is be open-minded.
Absolutely.
Don't think you know it all. Work with a coach. Coaches help give you clarity. They help build programming for you. As an athlete, as someone wants to get better, like find someone who's been through it and done it. And listen to their advice.
Yes.
Don't ask 100 million different people. Find someone you trust. And go on that journey yourself and know that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to screw up, but that's how you learn and that's how you're going to get to ultimately the end result.
Let me ask you one last question. I'm actually shocked that we filled an hour.
Actually, I think we're going to need to continue this next time.
At the next episode. But let me ask you one question before we sign off, and that is, what are the things that at the next episode?
Surround yourself with incredible people that inspire you, that motivate you, that make you feel good about yourself. Don't undermine the value of everything you do outside of the gym. So like you mentioned before, you're an athlete for an hour a day, and then there's 23 other hours in the day. If you want to improve your performance in anything in life, it's a 24-hour journey.
Yes.
You need to respect that.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing is be okay with failing and accept failure is growth and failure is part of the journey. And the more you fail, the more you grow because you know you're pushing your limits. Those are 3 big ones.
Couldn't say that any better myself. Want to thank iLive Radio for hosting us once again. We will be back for episode 3 later this month. And thanks once again. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and you can get us at strongathlete.com. You can find us on Instagram at strongathlete. And we're giving away our free nutrition guide. You can get that at strong-athlete.com/free performance nutrition guide, all one word. Or you can find that by just going to our site. There's a link on our homepage and some cool information on there that we're giving away.
Absolutely.
And we'll be back soon.
We'll be back. Have a positive day. Stay strong.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Changing the way you listen to radio. iLive Radio.
The best internet radio station around. iLive Radio.